CEO just disappeared. And I think his wife said, oh, he died. They think he's alive with everyone else's coin.
Right.
That's one thing. One person can just take off with those coins.
Exit scam. That's the ultimate exit scam. That's the ultimate Bitcoin boating accident. Oh, I'm dead. I don't have my private keys anymore.
Sounds like an episode of Arrested Development.
This is Bitcoin Basics Podcast with your host Ferris, that's me, and Gordon from Coin Compass. We're Bitcoin advisors and educators supporting business and individual investors to safely buy, manage, and control their private keys, Bitcoins. This podcast is strictly educational and is not intended to be financial or investment advice. Full disclaimer in the show notes and at the end of this episode.
Today is Sunday, the 16th of February, and the block number or block height is 617,551. For normal people, that's Sunday, February the 15th. Hey, Ferris, how's it going?
Good, everyone. How are we doing?
Good. I'm good. So last episode, we talked about wallets, but can you just do a quick recap about what we did in part one?
So last episode, which is we recommend what you start with before you go on to this one, we gave a summary of what a Bitcoin wallet is, which essentially is a way of how you store, receive, and send your Bitcoins. So in this episode, we're going to look into more details of specific wallets called custodial wallets or third-party wallets.
Yeah, so there's a lot of buzzword bingo, as we said in the last episode. There's hot wallets, cold wallets, hardware wallets, software, blah, 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 physical wallets, virtual wallets. But in my mind, there's really only two kinds of wallets, custodial and non-custodial. And to be honest, we were talking about this before, I get confused between the two. Today, we're going to look at custodial wallets. So what's a custodial wallet and what's some examples of a custodial wallet?
Yes, this is something, as Gordon said, we were talking about before, and we don't like the terminology custodial wallet because the presumption is you're taking custody when you hear that, but that's not the case. A custodial wallet or a third-party wallet is a term I prefer, where you're giving custody to someone else. So that's, for example, if you buy Bitcoin on an exchange and then you don't do anything else. Well, that's on a wallet on the exchange. So the exchange has custody, not you.
Yeah, good point. So the difference between it is who has access to the private keys. And if you don't have access to the private keys, you don't own your Bitcoin. So a custodial wallet could be considered perhaps something like a bank account. But why would people want to use a custodial wallet?
So the only reason you'd be using a custodial wallet, probably two. One reason, the more common one, is traders. So if you want to trade in and out of your Bitcoin, then you're not going to be sending it back and forth to your own personal wallet. It takes time. You're losing some fees and transaction. You leave it on the exchange because you want to buy and sell your Bitcoins in and out, and you just need that accessibility. And the other reason is maybe people who don't have very good IT knowledge or not very adept at using smartphones or really know what they're doing, they might think, you know what, I'm worried I'm going to lose these things. I might just leave them on the exchange and then get them when I want. So that second part is what we're around for. We teach you how to take full sovereignty of your own Bitcoins. But usually it's the first case. Either you're trading or B, you didn't actually realize you can get your Bitcoins off the exchange and you should.
So what's the danger if I buy some Bitcoins, I send some money to Coinbase or Bitstamp or Kraken or whatever those exchanges? I mean, as far as I'm aware, Binance and Coinbase haven't been hacked. What's the danger of leaving my coins on an exchange?
Well, the danger is that they can be hacked. Just because they haven't been doesn't mean that they will be. Some of those exchanges you mentioned have been hacked, I think. Some of them are insured. I think Binance is one of them that's actually insured these days. But the thing is, why take the risk? If you're not going to be trading your Bitcoins, why leave them with someone else? The main reason is traders that just want to go in and out of their positions very quickly. That's the main reason they leave them there. But I think Nick Szabo actually said exchanges exist to be hacked because when you think about it, there are that many Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies on an exchange, and it's a huge honeypot. They're going to get hit. They're going to get targeted. So you don't want to take that risk if you're not actively day trading your Bitcoins.
Yeah, so I think we've beaten this to a dead horse, but not your keys, not your Bitcoin is one of the sayings in the Bitcoin community. So if you don't own your keys, then basically you don't own your Bitcoin. So any Bitcoin you have on an exchange, you don't really own it, because that company could go bankrupt, they could get hacked, or they might do something nefarious with it.
Another thing, and this has happened, is you might find that one person has access to those Bitcoins, and there was a case of a Canadian-based crypto exchange last year where the CEO just disappeared, and I think his wife said, oh, he died. I think he's alive with everyone else's coin.
Right.
That's one thing. One person can just take off with those coins.
Exit scam. That's the ultimate exit scam. That's the ultimate Bitcoin boating accident. Oh, I'm dead. I don't have my private keys anymore.
Sounds like an episode of Arrested Development.
Yeah. Okay, so to play devil's advocate, if one of my non-tech savvy friends, or even use my parents, my mum, dad, they can barely use a mobile phone. They're going to forget the password. If I transfer Bitcoins onto a hardware wallet or something where they do have custody of their coins, I'm worried they'll lose their device, they'll lose their password, they'll lose their key. I think they're their own worst enemy. So actually, I think it's more likely that they would lose their Bitcoins off an exchange than on an exchange. So do you think that's really the only use case for non-traders, to have someone that they can call up? You got customer support if something goes wrong?
No, so like what you mentioned does happen. I had some friends who recently traveled to China, and she had some Bitcoins on her phone and took her phone to China with her. And they're out one day and got back to the hotel and realized, oh no, where's my phone? And they looked, didn't have her phone, and she ran back to the supermarket where they were and actually found her phone sitting on the shelf with her Bitcoins on it.
Wow.
She just put it on the shelf while she was shopping, and like a couple of hours later, very luckily it was there. But if anyone had picked up that phone, that's it. She's lost her Bitcoins. So I do see your point. Yeah, maybe they're safer leaving them on the exchange, but I'm uncomfortable with saying that out loud, because to me, once you know what you're doing, it's pretty simple. Once you're shown how to do it, it's quite simple to move your Bitcoins to a ledger or a Trezor or onto a cold storage device. So yeah, with instruction, just get your Bitcoins into your own personal vault, which is quite simple with instruction. So I see your point, but it makes me really uncomfortable that we consider that a solution when safer solutions are readily available.
Yeah, of course, I'm playing devil's advocate, but I do think for maybe 5% or maybe even less than that, that really they're not really tech savvy. They're going to lose their password. They're going to lose their private key, whether written it down or put it online or something like that. And of course, as the Bitcoin guy in your family, or guy or girl in your family, you probably should take a backup of that from them. But yeah, with some people, and maybe that's only 1% of people, it's like, no, there's more chance of you losing your private key than there is the exchange getting hacked. But for the other 99%, get it off.
Yeah.
Get your Bitcoins off an exchange. However, there are some other costs as well, and they're not just financial costs, but there are privacy costs to leaving your Bitcoins on an exchange. Considering a Bitcoin has your KYC information already, and you got to kind of make that decision, I guess, before you buy Bitcoin, where you buy Bitcoin, because you may say, well, I'm just going to buy Bitcoin on this exchange, then I'm going to move it straight off into my hardware wallet. That's great from a security and control point of view. You have full custody of those keys. But there is also a privacy cost that you have actually bought coins that are linked to your real world identity. And that company, even if they say that they're not tracking you or whatnot, who knows, some 3-letter agency may be sharing information with them. And basically, whatever you do after removing your coins from the exchange, so you might move it into a hardware wallet, you might send it to friends, you might do whatever you want with it, that can be tracked throughout time on the blockchain after that event. So even 10 years later, some analysis company could actually see those coins were bought on an exchange and it's linked to your identity. So I think that's actually an important point, that we're not just talking about security, which is obviously the main crux of this conversation, but we're talking about privacy as well. So that's perhaps a decision you need to make.
Yeah, sorry, Gordon. So just one slight correction there. You said Bitcoin has KYC. I think you meant the exchanges have your KYC details. So with that, there are obviously exchanges where you buy Bitcoin and it's like filling out a bank account. You have to provide ID, date of birth, address, the whole rigmarole. There are some exchanges where you can buy stuff privately. It depends on who you are. If you are basically buying Bitcoin because it's part of your investment portfolio, then you're following the rules and you do want to go through all the tax requirements that you have to go through. And as Gordon said, the problem you have is what happens if you lose those Bitcoins? Because that can happen. You can lose your Bitcoins. How do you prove to the government you no longer own something? And this is the problem that people have is, no, I don't have it anymore. Well, you need to prove you don't have it. How can you prove that you've lost something? Because the last transaction of the Bitcoins would have been, say, into your Coldwell wallet or into your mobile phone wallet, and you lost them. Well, you can't prove that. So you might end up paying taxes, or say, you're going through separation, divorce, dispute. You might end up having to pay for something you don't own anymore. So that's that's a tricky one. That one. And that's the thing with wallets, is that it depends on your use case scenario. And I know we do say this, but different wallets for different needs. I don't know if we're deviating off track here, Gordon. We tend to do that when we chat.
No, that's a good point, I think. And the last thing I'll say is, look, if you lose your private keys, as you said, you can't prove a negative. You can't prove that you don't have something. And especially when it comes to stuff like estate planning, what happens if you die? Your estate or your benefactors will have to get access to that Bitcoin. Well, if they don't have the private keys, they can't. And a lot of people, and this is not my argument, I don't think this is an excuse, but a lot of people say, well, if that's an exchange, that's not a problem, because you can call them up, you can, prove that this person's dead and show wills and get attorneys involved with it, blah, blah, blah. But obviously with a non-custodial solution, if you haven't left the private keys known in your will, then those Bitcoins are gone. So that is definitely something to consider.
Cool. All right. Now, what else do we want to address about custodial wallets?
That's pretty much it, I think. There's not a heck of a lot to talk about.
I think it's a record short podcast for us.
Yeah. So I think that's about it. But essentially, there are different kinds of wallets, but there's really only two categories. Custodial, where a third party, usually a company, or even if it's an app, a developer, owns and controls your private keys, like a bank account. Non-custodial, where you are responsible for the private keys, the managing of the private keys. So it doesn't really matter which kind of wallet you use, just be aware of who controls the keys, because the person who controls the keys owns the keys. Thanks for watching or listening. Please visit coincompass.com/free to register to our socials and discover other free content. Subscribing, liking, and following helps this content remain ad-free. Until next time.